I'm sure. Yeah, we've got technical people sitting back there. Yeah, well, we've got so today.
Right. Well, as I say, I'm the technical type. I'm usually on the sound.
Right.
And if anything's wrong, I usually just.
I know when it's
live, when it's on, you're only going to make it worse.
That's
So I usually just speak up.
So, I am, yes, he's applied for, so we have the role of basically leader of technology. So he mentioned that he worked for you. Yes, as director on the loan. I feel bad because I'm not trying to poach people from or so. Did he move to Clara? For a year or and now in your space assistant.
So our company,
And it's gross.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it's still
She's fine. They tried to
the numbers of magazine
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. If you could take your seats now, please. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the official launch of the National Healthcare Photonics Centre. My name is Dr. Tom Harvey. I am the team leader here for the Healthcare Photonics Centre, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody to this event today. So we have a very exciting programme lined up for you today, and you'll find all the details of that in your information pack. So please have a look at this agenda and some of the other information which we've included in the pack this morning. Before we kick off this morning, just a couple of housekeeping things to go through with you. one or two important things here. The building here is a no smoking building. So if you do need to do that, then you can do so, but I'm afraid you have to go outside to the smoking area for that. We've got a number of safety signs displayed throughout the building today. They're there for your safety. Please pay attention to those. If there is a fire today, and there is no test or alarm planned at the moment, you will see people in yellow vests who are fire wardens, and they will direct you towards the nearest exits. So from this room today, there are exits towards the back of the building. There's also an exit in the middle stairwell, and there are exits through the entrance that you came in this morning. Okay, so please do follow instructions should that be necessary to do so. And the assembly point for any fire alarm today is in the temporary car park area across the road from the main reception on John Walker Road. And the fire wardens will direct you to the right place for that. And as visitors, if you could make your way towards the middle or the back part of that car park area, that would be appreciated. But I'm sure that's not going to be required today. Instead, we're going to have a really interesting set of talks and programs for you today. So we're about to start, so I could just ask you to put your mobile phones to silent as well, for anyone who might have forgotten to do that as well. And then without further ado, I'd like to start by asking Nigel Perry, who is the Chief Executive of CPI, to make an introduction to us today. Nigel.
Thanks, Tom. Well, good morning. Good morning. And welcome. Welcome. Thank you for giving your time to come and help us celebrate the launch of this new world-class facility. I think you can all say, apart from the smell of paint, it is a very impressive facility, and we will show you it in much greater detail later on this morning as we take you around. We're also going to explain what its role is in helping with the Northern Powerhouse and also the UK's industrial strategy, and how we're already working with companies to help new photonics-based products and technologies get into the market. I've been asked today to give you some of the background on CPI and how some of our successes will move into the medtech industry, so we're transferring our own knowledge, our own experience into this industry. Some of you may know that we're a founder partner of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, and we have at our heart our customers' prosperity and that of the UK. We don't have shareholders, we are here to help our customers and the UK. We reduce the risk of adopting new technology for businesses both small and large, so that innovations that combat world challenges get into the market. We're very, very keen to bridge the gap between research and commercialisation. That's what we're here to. And we work to get not just products, but also the processes and the technology into market with the aim of helping Britain, helping more people to be employed in Britain, helping more companies to be successful in Britain. CPI has established a track record of delivering significant impact and value. In other words, just doing what I've said. We've worked in more than 2,000 companies, developing new technologies in diverse fields such as gas fermentation, smart packaging, barrier systems, personalised medicines, and graphene applications. And if you want to know about graphene applications, just ask, because it's an exciting area. We help research flow out of universities for the benefit of our society, enabling them to access and increase their global impact and build knowledge-based businesses for the future. We help UK companies turn concepts into market-ready products and services, and we do this in areas that are substantially and significantly important for society, such as healthcare, communications, new materials, and environmental sustainability. I'm particularly proud of the help that we've given to small and medium companies over the years. we've been able to raise, or working with companies that have been able to raise over £200 million of funding from the private sector. That is a transformative level of funding for those companies. And we've been able to take our proof of concept expertise and give confidence to the investors that are making that investment into the companies. We're able to help these companies because we understand innovation, what it takes to navigate routes to commercialization successfully. People think of us occasionally as a technology house. We're not. We're an innovation and translation house. We know what it takes to move an idea from the invention stage through to commercialization. And since 2004, when we started, we've done that for an awful lot of people and have garnered an awful lot of experience in it. We are actually very, very good at doing that. Today we are a company of about 450 people. We started in 2004 with one person, and those 450 people are focused solely on delivering value into companies, into our customers. They offer those companies the specialist equipment and expertise that they need, and do so without the companies needing to incur significant cost, because we already have. It's here. Over the past 5 years, we've increased our focus on healthcare. Healthcare is one of the largest demands on our society, and it is one of the most fascinating and fast-growing areas of technology that is aimed to satisfy that demand. We've built capability in pharmaceuticals, particularly in pharmaceutical formulation, which is just across in the other building, including nanoparticles, biopharmaceutical manufacturing down at Darlington, and we're just in the process of investing £56 million in Scotland looking at small molecule innovation to assist with the more common pharmaceuticals. The National Healthcare Photonics Centre will add to our existing and emerging portfolio of healthcare focus to serve a broad range of organisations as we strive to support what is our vision of a healthier society enabled by cutting-edge science and technology. The use of photonics to diagnose and treat medical conditions is one of the most exciting and high-impact applications of technology being explored in the world today. The field offers new approaches to address the growing global demand for non-invasive, cost-effective and personalised treatments. A recent example of this is found in glaucoma. Now, this is what I should say. I have a track record of going off-piste, so I always get scripted for these things. So when I read this, I didn't realise I was going to be talking about glaucoma, and it's something I have personal experience of. So when I read this, I thought, if I wasn't passionate about this before we started, I sure am passionate now. So, as people know, it's an eye disease, it's a series of eye diseases, it's the world's leading cause of blindness, and about 2% of the population over the age of 40 have that. Quite traumatic for the people who've got it. A recently developed photonic technique called optical coherence tomography, I'm practicing that all the way through breakfast, or OCT for short, is significantly improving our ability to diagnose glaucoma earlier and to monitor the progress of the disease and how it responds to treatment, for which I say hallelujah on behalf of a number of people. The National Healthcare Photonics Centre will play a pivotal role in transforming the North East into a global hub for healthcare photonics. The other investments that CPI has made will have the net effect of transforming the North East into a global hub for healthcare, which is really exciting. We will complement the work that's already going on in the universities, particularly at Newcastle's Centre for Ageing and Data. So you're starting to see a global regional offer emerge, which I personally am very passionate about and very excited about. I'm particularly passionate about what's been created here. When we first had the idea 7 years ago, I said to the guys, if you can do it, I'll give you all the support and all the help I possibly can. And with efforts like people like Tom Harvey working their off, and leadership from the advisory committee led by Anka here, this is the result. I am absolutely overwhelmed by it, gobsmacked by it. It's very, very impressive, and I hope you enjoy your visit to it today. And I hope you will help us develop the centre into developing our promises and our mission as CPI. Now, some of you may know that Phil Wilson was going to perform the opening. We had to press Anchor into service this morning as she got out of her coach. We took her clothes, we took her coat off and gave her a pair of scissors, and she hadn't even had a chance to say good morning or anything. And I was speaking to Phil yesterday, who apologises profusely. He wanted to be here. He was the guy who did the groundbreaking, or the sod cutting, as we call it in the northeast. And he's really sad not to be here. But as I'm sure you will understand, he has a few other things on his mind. Those of you who don't know, Phil Wilson's the local MP. And when I asked him yesterday morning what was going to happen, he said, I have absolutely no idea. I haven't spoken to him this morning to find out what he thinks. But he sends his very best wishes to us, and he wishes he could be here. He will come here again. And can I just extend my thanks to Anchor for operating the scissors with consummate professionalism. Thank you so much. It also says on the script here, I have to insert a Brexit joke. Unfortunately, I don't have any. I've run out of them, so I'm not going to bore you with a Brexit joke. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to hand over to Tom Harvey. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great day. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for that introduction to CPI. Let me talk about the new Photonics Centre, and let me give you a little bit of an introduction to the sort of thing that you're going to be able to benefit from in the future by working with us here. As Nigel has said, it has been a fairly long journey to get to this point. And really it gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity at the start of this presentation to thank a number of people, and I make no apologies for spending some time on this and for thanking some people in person. So first of all, to the people who have made the centre possible by funding and providing funds for it. That would be the North East LEP through the Northern Powerhouse and the Local Growth Fund. And specifically Richard Baker, the Head of Strategy and Policy at the North East LEP, Ray Browning, the Project Manager, Ray's here today, and Alan Welby, who you'll be hearing from shortly. Alan is the Innovation Director at the North East LEP. And as Nigel says, also to Phil Wilson for his support today. And to our partners at the Catapult, High Value Manufacturing Catapult and Innovate UK through core funding that they've provided towards the project. So in addition to that, we stand today in the Net Park site, and Business Durham have done great things in developing this site and making it available for new businesses. So thank you to Catherine Johns and Peter McDowell from Business Durham for their contributions to the project and the development of the Net Park site. We're also working very closely with Durham University, and you will see one of the demonstrators today is strongly linked with the university, and a number of people here today are involved in university spin-outs. We have Andy waiting from the university here today to speak to us. And I'd like to thank Tim Hammond, in particular at Durham University, for his tireless support for the project. Well, the External Advisory Board have been spending the last 2 years in helping us to try to make the centre a good match and fit to what our clients want. And I'd like to thank in particular members of the External Advisory Board, Anka Lohman, our chairwoman, Jonathan Belsey, John Gherkin, Paul Goodwin, Peter Jarrett, Richard Kirk, John Lincoln, Gabriella Martinez,
Ian Newington, Ian Radley, Matt Wasley and Nicola Wesley. So thank you very much. Your contribution has been really appreciated. And to colleagues at CPI, I'm not going to go through a long list, but your help has been very much appreciated. And I would single out the contribution from my colleague Arun Harish, who conceived the concept of this centre back in 2013, believe it or not. So thank you, Arun, for your support in making it happen. The building itself, we've had a great project team led by Bob Preston, project manager. Bob is in the audience today, by Joe Barron and his team at Sogo Construction, Dave Pickersgill at architects, local architects, Howard Litchfield, and Neil Marshall, who has supervised the building works here today. So thank you very much to everybody's contributions. So I'd like to start talking about the NHS's long-term plan. We've just had this published back in January, and I think it's important that we, as scientists, address ourselves and align ourselves to the needs of the NHS. So, in fact, the total UK expenditure on healthcare is actually 192 billion a year. That's including social care, and it's growing at 3.6% a year. So it's a really important area. And as you can see, the NHS is telling us that the key things that it's looking for the future is to make sure everybody is getting the best start in life, to deliver world-class care for major health problems, and for supporting people to age well. So that means that the NHS is looking for solutions that will enable earlier diagnosis of disease. Particularly they're interested in new approaches to mental health, for example, and to look at new approaches to diagnosing and treating cancer and other rare diseases. And increasingly, as we age, we want to age well, and patients present with complex and multi-morbidities. So having the right diagnostic tools and the right support is really important. I should say there are already a number of catapult centres who are operating in healthcare. CPI has the National Biologics Manufacturing Centre in Darlington that is into the manufacturing of biologics, medicines. There is the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, the Precision Medicine Catapult, and the Medicines Discovery Catapult. So I think we can see that we already recognise that the catapults have an important contribution to play in healthcare. So all of these challenges involve us developing new devices that can be used for diagnosis, for drug delivery, and for aids to support independent living. So what's it about? It's about improving the patient quality of life, but also at the same time we need to have speed and accuracy of diagnosis, and the devices need to operate safely as well. So all of those aspects are important. So the healthcare market is more than just one thing. There is pharmaceuticals, there are medical technologies, and there are healthcare systems. But all of these represent challenges in high-value manufacturing, and all of these represent opportunities for innovation. We're particularly interested here in this centre in medical devices. So what is a medical device? Well, really, it's something which is used in the prevention, diagnosis, or treatment of a patient, and for detecting or measuring that, or helping to restore their bodily function for some health purpose. And the medtech industry in the UK is a really important sector of the economy. There are 86,000 people employed in the sector, and there are over 2,000 companies in the core medtech sector, excluding digital. 53 of those companies are greater than £50 million turnover, and so it's a really important sector. It's about 40% of the total life sciences sector, 16.8 billion turnover, and to put that in some context, the NHS spends about 6 billion a year on medtech. There's about 3 billion on disposables like syringes and bandages, but also about 3 million on more complex medical devices as well. So small companies, Nigel has mentioned our support for small companies, And small companies are a very important part of this sector. They comprise 84% of all of the companies in the sector and about a third of the jobs and about a third of the turnover as well. But it's not easy for small companies in the healthcare sector. It's a highly regulated market and there are long development cycles. It's a costly approval process. So this is not an easy market to enter. Not only that, there is not an easy pathway to adoption for your new technology into the NHS, although the NHS has recognised this and recently introduced a number of schemes designed to improve that. There's also a number of established players in the market. So as a small company, it's not easy for you to get into that, and you need both cost differentiation and technology differentiation for your product to be successful in the market. It's no good just having the best tech, but you really need to have that at the right price. And it's a dynamic market. It's changing a lot, and it takes a long time to introduce your product to this market. So these are a number of challenges, and that is why centres like this one are set up in order to try to help companies overcome some of these difficulties. The National Healthcare Photonics Centre aims to deliver healthcare solutions in therapies, diagnostics and imaging using photonics as an enabling technology. And if we do that right, we can help you guys and companies to get their ideas off of the lab bench and into economically and commercially viable products. So why photonics? Well, I'm going to give you a number of good reasons why. Number one, photonics is a key enabling technology. What does that mean? Well, key enabling technologies are knowledge intensive and they're associated with high R&D intensity. They have rapid innovation cycles and they make or require highly skilled employment and highly skilled people. They enable innovation throughout the economy and are relevant right across a number of different areas, and they can be the catalyst to innovation, bringing technologies from one area to another. So in addition to photonics, other key emerging technologies that you might recognise, there are micro and nanoelectronics, for example, nanotechnology, industrial biotechnology, and advanced manufacturing technologies. Secondly, the UK has world-leading research in photonics. I took a look on the EPSRC Healthcare Technologies Theme website, and I see that there are 332 grants currently awarded in the healthcare technology theme, £1 million. And medical imaging is one of the largest areas of those. And if I just pick out the top 3 funded projects in terms of value, the first one is at the University of Exeter for £5.8 million on Raman Theragnostics, developing targeted diagnostics and therapeutics of the future by combining light and functionalized nanoparticles. Secondly, at UCL, the Centre for Doctoral Training in Medical Imaging. And thirdly, at our local university in Newcastle, a £5 million grant for controlling abnormal network dynamics with optogenetics. That's the CANDO project. So you can see that really there is the investment and there is that world-class research in the UK. Finally, the last 2 points are no less important. Photonic methods can be non-invasive and non-contact, which goes to the rapid diagnostics, and accuracies can be improved using photonics over, for example, just simple ultrasound, for example. So photonics in the UK, there are in itself 65,000 people employed in photonics, and it's a high value add per employee. It's about 3 times the average employee productivity for somebody working in photonics manufacturing. Itself, it's worth about £12 billion to the economy, and it's very important export as well. Biophotonics, as a segment of that, is a very important segment. Worldwide, about $30 billion, the biophotonics segment. It's got a very high growth rate predicted for the next few years. And the sorts of things that we're talking about in biophotonics are things like inside imaging. So this is endoscopy, or imaging inside of the body. See-through imaging, so this is something like CT scanning, for example. We've got microscopy, and you'll see some demonstrations of the microscopy. Imaging in different parts of the spectrum, and then other types of analytical technologies and techniques as well. So there's a range of things there. So what is the new centre going to do? Well, the new centre is here to help. That is the main message. So there are four things here really. We can bring complementary resources to companies' existing capabilities in order to get their innovation realised. And perhaps that sometimes means consortium building, or sometimes it means business support, not just technical support. But if it does mean technical support, you can be sure that we have a good technical team here, and we have some technical expertise which is highly specific and something that you probably don't have in your organisation already. You'll see in our manufacturing lab downstairs when you go on the tour later that we're able to produce small volumes for clinical trials and help you to get that product through those initial stages of design for manufacture and pilot manufacturing. So the idea is that we can equip your company with a community of technical and commercial innovation specialists, and also provide access to the specialist facilities. And not only that, but we're building links within our local healthcare system to our colleagues in the local trusts here on Teesside, in Durham and in Newcastle to link in with the appropriate people. So what is photonics, or which part of the spectrum are we interested in? We're interested in that part of the spectrum which is between gamma rays and the infrared. So there's a lot of different wavelengths to go at. And specifically, what capabilities are we providing for the new centre? Well, on the medical, first of all, we have the medical device design. So in optical modelling, we have the ZMAX package. In mechanical modelling, it's the SolidWorks package, and electrical modelling, the Altium. And these modelling packages together allow you a complete design environment for your medical device. Once you've got your device, you still have to test and validate it. And to do that, here we are applying for a Human Tissue Authority license, which will allow us to test the device using the appropriate samples, be that cells, tissue, blood, or whatever, and we'll be able to pre-CE mark electrical test your device as well. On the materials optical characterization, specifically, we have facilities here for fluorescence, absorption, spectral measurements, and that could be solid or liquid samples, and we have some very nice facilities for the assay development for optical-based assays as well. On the prototype manufacturing, in order to realise the product, specifically, we have a number of 3D printing systems, laser cutting, vacuum forming, and we can also do the development of the electronics to go with that. In the pilot manufacturing, specifically clean assembly, which is important for anyone making photonics components, and scale up of any assembly operation as well. Optical system development is about light sources, about detectors, and about image analysis, and we have some facilities in our labs for the development of those. And finally, we have a specialised test and imaging. So this is X-ray imaging, gamma ray imaging, and for the development of new components and systems for using that. We've all been a patient, and we all understand, therefore, the importance of regulation in medical device development. You would not want a device tried out on you that was not 100% safe and 100% tested. And so this facility will have registration under the ISO 13485 system for all of the activities that we do to design, develop and manufacture those devices for therapeutic drug delivery or optical in vitro diagnostic devices. So the team here is currently 8 people, myself, my commercial manager Tom Beale, Deepan Shah is our bids manager, John Orga our quality manager, and we currently have a technical team, Owen, Wayne, Catherine and Martin, who will be giving you demonstrations in each of the lab areas later. And the facilities that we have in the new centre, we have some specific design capabilities. So what is the business model that we have with you? How do you work with us here? Well, we have several ways we can help you with your technology development, because your success is our success in these matters. So what about the economic impact of this new centre? So there are three things really. Job creation. So we aim to create the jobs not only in this building but also in companies in the surrounding environment, and improve the skills and training of those, and as a result we will have increase in economic activity. So we're expecting a 5 times return on the investment that the North East LEP has made here in the North East, and about 4.5 times that for the UK economy as a whole. And not only that, with economic impact, we also have societal impact. So if we can improve and develop the next generation of healthcare technologies, it's life-changing for patients, it's relieving the pressure on our healthcare system, and it's turning patients from passive receivers of healthcare into active managers of their own health. So my message to you today is that the new centre is open for business, and we look forward to receiving you into the new building. Thank you very much. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce a number of speakers for you today who will go into more technical details about the potential for photonics in the market. And first up this morning is Dr. Andrew Robertson from Gooch & Housego, and Andrew is one of the leaders of their activities in biophotonics. Andrew,
okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Tom. I'm going to give a presentation really on some of the technologies that we supply into the biophotonics sector. And then my responsibilities at Gooch & Housego are I'm Senior Vice President responsible for biophotonics and life sciences, our market area. And actually, Nigel talked about OCT, and I've had the pleasure of working in OCT since it began, and I'll cover some of the work we've done in OCT. We are pretty much a component company and in the laser industry, and I'll talk about some of the applications in lasers as well. And from a very early stage, lasers have been used in the medical biophotonics industry. It's one of the first uses of lasers. Okay, who are we? I hope some people know who Gooch & Housego are. We're one of these companies that kind of we don't spend much on marketing, but we have five facilities in the UK. Actually, Ilminster is the headquarters, doing acousto-optics, precision optics. Torquay, where I'm based, passive optics. Glenrothes, Kent Periscopes, which is confusingly in North Wales, and ITL is a recent acquisition who are in Kent as well. And in the US, we have certain facilities. And the areas that we really specialise in are very specialist optics. So the manipulation of photons, the detection of photons, and as I'll show you, they're used a lot. These types of components are used a lot in biomedical technology. So we do everything from making lenses, flats, prisms, to very, very niche things like acousto-optics, electro-optics, fiber optics, and more recently we acquired a company that does biomedical. So these are the sectors that we are in. The biggest one is industrial at the moment, which is about 60% of our business. Next comes aerospace and defence, which is 30% of our business. And then at the moment, or that was last year's figures, life sciences was 10%, but that doesn't include our acquisition of ITL, which doubles that business. And pretty much all of that business is photonics. So we are a photonics company. That's what we know about. So in the biomedical sector, the markets that we really are supplying into and have done for many years. Laser surgery is one, microscopy is another, optical coherence tomography is the third one, and then more recently our acquisition ITL, it's medical instrumentation. So they are not a photonics company. They manufacture instruments with photonics in them, but what they are doing is actually building regulatory compliant medical instruments, and they will help with the design, they'll do the manufacture. They also have a facility in China and the US for servicing and the compliance to the 13485 FDA and CFDA, which is the Chinese equivalent. So that's how we see the segmentation of this market. That's something that pretty much similar to what Tom showed. Diagnostics and analytics, which includes in vitro IVD, which we are into, the in vivo as well. Imaging, microscopy, endoscopy, surface see-through imaging. These are all the terms that you'll see. And what I call processing and curing. Processing can be, cutting things with lasers, and curing are things like photodynamic therapy. That's them. Okay, and then when we look at it from the food chain point of view, this is how we look at the market. Basically, again, this is from the photonics optics point of view. The components market down at the bottom, then subsystem, which are components with some which are integrated to perform a function, which could be imaging, spectral analysis. Then you go up to the biophotonic systems, where you're building a system which is doing something, and it has software, power, packaging, and servicing. Big important thing in biophotonics is not only being able to manufacture things, but servicing these things. And then the biggest part of the market is the systems market, which includes the system and the consumable and reagent. Always got to think of how you're going to make money in this market, and making a device. And if you make a device, that's great, and if it can do wonderful things, that's great. You can be sure someone else will try and make it cheaper. And here in the West, there's Asia, big market. The golden chalice is to get also something which has consumables and reagents that you can sell on. Yeah, so that's just a little bit more on ITL there. I won't say anything more about this other than where they fit in are. It could be a startup company or a larger company who generally see the instrument is a necessary evil to sell their drug or their test or their consumable. So they don't want to make the machine, but they want to sell the drug or consumable or gas or whatever it is. They need someone they don't want to set up a manufacturing centre, which is not their core business. So they have companies build these instruments, and that's where we come in there. So the actual components for manipulating the light, I'm not going to go into great details in the technology here. You're welcome. I can recommend many books on the optics associated with all of these. But basically, electro-optics is something that's used to pulse lasers, to create short pulses of light with a lot of energy to smash things in general, is how they're used. Acousto-optics, it's something similar, slightly subtly different, but again to create pulses of light. And both of these technologies, we grow the crystals, we process the crystals, we coat the crystals, we make the components, and we sell it to the user, which is generally a laser manufacturer. Another special thing you can do with acousto-optics, which comes into microscopy, is you can use it as a tunable filter, an electronically tunable filter. Yeah, so pulse laser for surgery. That's something that is, is a kind of growing market. It takes some time for these things to come in, all the regulatory compliance, and when you're proving the efficacy of something that you're sticking in the body somewhere, which is firing out massive amounts of light energy, there's a lot of safeguards you need to put in place. However, there are a number of key applications: lithotripsy, arthroscopy, BPH as well. The key thing, for example, the problem you have, this is a kidney stone or a stone. You want to destroy this thing without actually damaging any of the soft tissues, and that usually you need a very specific wavelength of light, a very specific pulse light. So there's different wavelengths used, different there. That's the BPH laser, which basically, when you insert it, lights up the whole body. There. Cosmetic surgery, medical, is it medical? Well, some of it isn't. The tattoo removal maybe isn't medical, but cosmetic surgery has its advantages in that it doesn't have to have the regulatory approvals that medical has, so sometimes it can move a little bit faster. That was the first medical laser use, tattoo removal. We've all made the mistake. You wake up in the morning, you've got the wrong neck to the wrong name. What are you going to do? So actually, it's a market that was the first application of lasers and is still a growing market. 40% of US adults have a tattoo. 1 in 5 regret at least one tattoo. In Europe, the big tattoo people, it's the Italians and the Swedish are the people with the tattoos. We are actually rather conservative with the Germans and the French, quite conservative when it comes to tattoos, which might tell you that there's a big market elsewhere. The first laser, the ruby laser, was used originally for tattoos and still is. So there are still lasers basically being built today for tattoo removal, which are almost exactly like the first laser that was ever built. Hair removal, skin remodeling, treatment of lesions, skin brightening, all parts of the body. There's nothing that's not basically being whitened, lightened, tightened with a laser. Treatment of scar tissues. This is a really interesting area because they found that if you do very small micro holes through the scar tissue to the dermis, then the scar tissue doesn't reform, but proper tissue will reform. Thermal regeneration is called. There have been some amazing cases where people who've been badly burnt, who can't turn their neck or move their hands, they've had this done to them, and they get their mobility back. So it's an area that's there's a lot of work going on. Cosmetic, as I said, it sometimes doesn't take quite as long because the regulatory way is different in different countries, of course. South Korea is a real hotbed of surgical or cosmetic applications, because in Japan it's tightly controlled, so the Japanese all go to Korea to get their treatments. What's happening? What's new there? Well, femtosecond lasers and micromachining, particularly of the eye, is being done, and basically they're removing parts of the eye, adding things to the eye. The camera inlay is that little thing here, there, which basically all those who know optics and cameras, if you have a small aperture, basically your depth of field improves. So that's an area that's really emerging in here with femtosecond lasers. So microscopy, you'll hear more about microscopy, but microscopy, it's something that's been around for a long time, but actually in recent years, the actual technology has been advancing extremely fast. And this is a Leica. Sorry to anyone who might be selling other microscopes, but that's a Leica device, and the photonics that's in it. These things are all acousto-optic devices, and then there's filters. There's a STED. There's a STED laser. White light. We're using supercontinuum lasers, which apparently is the ultimate source for confocal microscopy. And these we're happy about that, because these all need our components. But very, getting very sophisticated, these machines. And one thing that we've been working with University College London. It was mentioned, they're one university that gets a lot of money, and they're using, and it's great for us, multiple acousto-optic devices, so that they can actually very quickly manipulate the focus and scan the beam. And this is why is this interesting as well? It's to see neurons in the brain, it's to see brain activity, and that is really pushing the technology, and the work. Paul Kirkby, he is, they are looking at, they give it some sort of light or whatever stimulus, and then they can see the neurons firing off. This is really cutting edge stuff. Paul's just founded a startup company, Agile Diffraction. But this is all in vivo work. OCT, great area. Thank you. Stolen the thunder. But where does it sit? It's OCT is 1 to 10 microns. Here, it's ultrasound, more resolution than ultrasound, less than microscopy. And really, where it's being used, see where we use. So we supply a lot of the insides. So if you've actually had your eye scanned for OCT, it is extremely likely that a component from Torquay was in that device. And we've even got two devices from a company that we supply to in the International Space Station, where they're doing work on looking at how the eye behaves under zero gravity. But we are supplying a lot of it. It was eye identified very early on. We used to just sell a fused coupler eye identified. There's lots of other optics we could sell, and we really grew that business. So that's what it's good at. How else are you going to image the back of the eye? Think about it. While the eye is still alive, of course. So where we are now, high resolution scanning is a fairly mature market for the back of the eye. Multiple players, but that was the first image back in '93. So that's something that's been relatively fast, but there was really no other way to image the eye. I guess that was a key thing. There's no other way to do it without taking out the eye and cutting it off. So fantastic, the work that they've done. But the other thing in biomedical is the pathology always lags behind the technology. So when you start seeing great things that you've never been able to see before, so what does that mean? That actually, you say, look, we can see this, we can see that. Well, what is it telling us? And so actually that's an interesting thing. So I see this again and again with people who have this great idea of an imaging technology, and it's like, okay, so you're going to see something that you've not been able to see before. Yeah, okay. So how's that going to be used? And it takes some time. Normative database is what they talk about in biomedical. The front of the eye, that's something that's coming a little bit more to the fore now. So, and that's really for refractive surgery. And they've got these greatly. This is Johnson & Johnson, eye LASIK, very great name, great marketing there. But that section of business used to belong to, I think it was Abbott Medical. Johnson & Johnson bought $4 billion, just the business of surgical, refractive surgical. So it's big business, but there's other places to use OCT. This is cardiology. That's probably the second biggest application after the ophthalmology. And then here you're looking at a stent here, and as you go along, there's no stent there, and then the stent appears. So basically, stents are great, except you generally have to go back and look and find out are they working properly. So OCT is used for that. And then the big it's competition, IVUS, which is more ultrasound. The OCT has the better resolution. But again, if you're seeing things in more detail, you have to work out what they're seeing first. Really, it takes some years. And then, so what future direction? Well, dual modality. This coming in, Raman was mentioned. Raman with OCT. Very high speed video rate, OCT, I wasn't smart enough to be able to put this on my computer, but there's a great YouTube video, and that's actually a pin. That's actually a pin, and that's just your skin, and the guy moves it around, and you see it high resolution video rate, megahertz speed OCT, which the limitation then is the computing power. And actually, I think they kind of cheated and did post-processing. I don't know. It'll get there. It'll get there. And then photonic integrated circuits. Can we put all of this in a chip and then have these OCT machines at home? And they want this because they want to measure drug efficacy. And I hear great stories from the OCT guys saying that apparently people who need injections into their eyeball, they're not very good at going back to have a second one and go and keep them. I can't imagine why. So they're thinking is if they have an OCT machine at the home that it can actually tell them you really need to go back, that they go back. Now, why is it interesting? I thought, what? And then they said each injection is $1,600, and then I realised, okay, that it probably makes sense to get someone to go back. So where do we see that? From our point of view, surgical lasers is growing faster than most of the other laser areas. Dental, cosmetic, vet, lasers for your pets. If you look up lasers for your pets, you'll find wonderful pictures on the internet of dogs, little dogs with laser safety goggles. I don't quite know what they're doing to them yet, but it's an increasing area. Microscopy, it's generally conservative, but some sectors grow fast. I mean, that's like in every industry. IVD is that's all right, middle of the road growth, but that's a huge market. That's probably the largest market. Fluorescence readers, and the great thing for the photonics guys is we don't care about your particular IP on the test or the chemistry, as long as you need fluorescence markers. That's great, because that completely goes across everybody's different chemistries and techniques. They all need a fluorescence reader, so that's great for us. I think that's me.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We have a tight schedule today, so if you have any questions for Andrew, then please do find him at lunch. So, Andrew mentioned the word reagents there, and I think by chance we have Professor Andy Whiting from Litox, who will give the next presentation, and I think he will address exactly said subject. Andy.
Indeed, thank you. Okay, well we've heard a bit about chemistry, and I'm going to tell you a bit about Litox. We are based on chemical science, but working across disciplines with photophysicists, with biologists, and we're a micro SME. We're very small in number. Our wage bill is beginning to grow though, so we're obviously at that stage where we need to move on and develop. And I'm going to start off on telling you where we're going to go, based on where we've been, and carry on to where the future lies for us as a company. So we are based on some work that started meeting up with somebody who I'd forgotten that I'd been an internal examiner for PhD. He reminded me a long time ago. We started looking at chemistries related to retinoic acid signalling. It sounds a long way from a light-based therapy company, but in fact we were looking at these types of molecules. ATRA, as many of you will know, sort of quick bit of biological chemistry for you, is probably one of the most important signalling molecules. It's involved in differentiation, apoptosis, embryonal development, and is a really key molecule throughout life, throughout all the main systems. And this is a molecule that we started a while ago looking at making analogues of that were completely metabolically stable, or at least as stable as we could make them in a chemical and biochemical sense, so that we could study their interaction with retinoic acid receptors, looking at the signaling pathways, interactions with X receptors, and looking at the downstream biological effects of that. Entirely curiosity-driven science. And so this story really is about obviously the founding of a company, spin-out company based mainly at Durham University, but based very much on absolutely blue skies research in the first instance. Now, a key molecule for us, and in fact structurally very much related to some of the systems we're going to mention in a few moments, some key lead molecules that are commercially available now through Litox. This is a compound which was one of the first ones we designed as an analogue of all-trans-retinoic acid. Now this is metabolically extremely stable. What it did was it would take neuroprogenitor cells and would trigger differentiation processes to give you neural type cell systems and neural bundles. And very similar in fact to ATRA, and in fact at a lower concentration than ATRA. So these molecules are not very well metabolized, highly bioavailable, very similarly to all-trans-retinoic acid, and so is a great probe for probing retinoic acid signaling pathways. And that's really where we started out. So, of course, there is the potential in perhaps developing drugs based on these. And in fact, synthetic retinoids have been around for a long time, but they're considered particularly toxic. So we weren't looking to develop drugs in any way, shape or form at the time. People had gone there, they'd already developed anti-cancer agents based on these types of compounds, and it didn't look promising. So we were really very much looking at developing the probe capabilities. Now, EC20, that's Litox 2, this compound that you've just seen here. This compound has a little bit of fluorescence, very low level. Of course, it has a nice UV chromophore shown here, but it really isn't terribly fluorescent. So this isn't very good as a fluorescent probe. And so we started to think about, well, is there something we could do to make it useful as an imaging probe, in which we could use it for imaging purposes. And actually, if we were able to retain the biological activity as well, we could do imaging as well as these differentiation processes. So could we build that into it? And what we realised is that we could probably create a dipole across this molecule, particularly putting an electron donor in this part of the molecule here, so they would push electrons all the way through to this end of the molecule. That might make it fluorescent, and that was the basic idea, which in the end has resulted in Litox. We thought there were lots of possible applications, and certainly following these molecules around in terms of where they go, localization, temporal effects, as well as differentiation and cell development effects as well. So we thought this was a pretty good idea. In fact, we were surprised just how good it was. Sorry?
What was lifetime of that day?
Sorry,
Lifetime. Fluorescence lifetime.
Well, it depends on which molecule. We have a large number of...
So what you have shown on that slide.
I can't remember the fluorescence lifetime. John, can you remember? John?
I think that one's about 2.5.
Yeah, they're short.
They're short.
Yeah. So these types of molecules are hugely solvatochromic. So we attach the electron donor at one end, we get the conjugation right the way through the molecule, creating the dipole, and the UV absorption, obviously, we get a much better chromophore, and also similarly with the fluorescence spectrum as well. So again, solvatochromic nature of these things means that you can sense to a certain extent, obviously, the environment in which these molecules end up. Obviously, the intensity as well varies hugely as a function of polarity of the region where these molecules end up. We thought they would be pretty good, though, for particularly for following around and sensing environment, and of course we've also managed to look at 2-photon fluorescence as well. So these molecules we thought would be quite useful, and early on we managed to use these molecules, for example, in HT29 cells and also in keratinocytes. These are these HACAT cells, and you see different types of localization depending on which particular compound we've been using. Now we've made quite a number of these. So we've made tens of compounds which we play around with the functional groups, and we can change the localization of where these fluorescent probes end up. So this is a particularly interesting thing if you want to obviously to do microscopy and look at these types of molecules, where they go, but also structurally these molecules have acetylene in them, so they have a Raman chromophore in the region of the spectrum where biomolecules don't have an absorption. So you can use the acetylene also to do co-Ramans. You can do dual mode imaging as well, and this is something we're developing, and we've just published the first paper on another one, probably on the way quite soon. So these molecules, we can activate them with light, we can see where they turn up and see what they do. And we were also surprised, though, when we were doing some of this work, that in fact you can also kill cells as well, which I'll come on to in a moment. So could we make molecules, so for example like the original one that I showed you right at the beginning, Litox-2, in which could we retain, for example, stem cell differentiation in a human teratoma cell line, very similarly to ATRA, similarly to the Litox-2, and still get the molecules turning up around the nucleus, and therefore expect to see nuclear staining. And in fact you can. So this was the first of the fluorescent ATRA-like analogues, and you can see it turning up in the nuclear membrane in this system. And you do get differentiation, somewhat slower than ATRA and the Litox-2, but these things do work very nicely. So of course you can follow these things around. You can also think about using these types of molecules because they're relatively low molecular weight. You can attach them to other kinds of drug molecules and perhaps even to larger targeting molecules as well, and that's something we're actively working on. So that was the background work. We decided that we wanted molecules which were not merely retinoid in activity, because retinoids are, of course, as I mentioned, hugely biologically active, involved in many different signaling pathways, and so we decided to switch off that retinoid activity by making the molecules a little bit longer, so they wouldn't fit into retinoid binding sites, and increasing the fluorescence at the same time. And we were greeted with the fact that when we then did our imaging, the area where the confocal microscope we were using was shining on the cell samples, we actually killed all the cells, which wasn't exactly what we'd expected. And the unirradiated zone, the cells were intact. So we realised that these molecules actually can act as photosensitizers, particularly efficient, these longer molecules, and they are able to kill cells by generating reactive oxygen species. So that led to the formation of the spin-out company. We'd already thought about using our molecules and making them available, especially as probes for imaging. But now we have the capability to make those probes fluorescent, we can see how they turn up, and we can now kill tissues as well, particularly with these non-retinoid type systems, and attach those to other biomolecules to act as targeting agents. So that's the we're principally